Here we go. All right, we're recording, and I guess we'll get started. We'll start with negotiate. The life skill we are doing today, everybody, is negotiation. And just to introduce ourselves again, I'm Donald, the director of the Atlantic Center for Independent Living. And Don,
And I'm Dawn, the Independent Living Specialist at Atlantic Center for Independent Living.
So we are going to do our life skill presentation with the topic being negotiation. So negotiation, I mean, we negotiate every day, and it's the ability to recognize, to communicate, and to work towards a project or a goal. It occurs when two parties or a group of individuals are trying to figure out a solution to a problem. A successful negotiation requires two parties to come together. I think the key word there is compromise. In the following process, outline some bullet points that you can apply to help negotiate. You negotiate. We'll move to the next slide.
Okay, so first, when you are negotiating, you need to identify, right, what the issue is at hand. So you need to determine what the interests of everyone is in that negotiation, and then how to get the best interests of everyone heard, and then get the best interests of either both parties or all parties, a common answer or problem solving. So I have an example here. In an employer and employee contract negotiation, the problem or area where the parties disagree may be in salary or benefits. So I'm the employer, I'm the employee, Donald's my employer. I'm saying, hey, I think I should get paid more. And Donald can flat out say to me, well, that can't happen because we only have so much in the budget for you and what your pay is. So I tried to negotiate there. I kind of got shut down because it was pretty black and white. But by going to Donald, I was able to state my need, and he was able to state why he couldn't pay me more money, okay? And that's just a basic negotiation right there. But it's also about, and that'll come up in the following slides, your delivery. So that communication style that we touched on last week. If I was aggressive and I went in yelling at Donald, he probably would have asked me to leave his office and not even wanted to listen to me. So when you're negotiating, the best communication style would be that assertive communication style where you remain calm, you have eye contact, your body language projects confidence, and you know what you're asking for.
Right, and and you're asking for things, I also think it's important to back it up. So if you're asking for a raise or asking for anything, you can explain why you think it is appropriate and why you think it should be done. And if you approach it with that assertive communication style where you're respectful of your employer and saying what you need, even if it's not in the budget this year, maybe one day when it is in the budget, your boss will remember this conversation and be more willing to give you what you want. But if you just come in there aggressive and with no evidence asserting your position, then that's not good negotiation skills, and you're not understanding, really the whole picture, which I think is the key to the first step of negotiation.
So one of the last bullets on this slide, and then we'll move on, does say identifying the issues for both sides can help to find a compromise for all parties. So you need to know what you want.
And what the other person wants and what they can say in response. I think that's key. Preparation. This is really important. Before you enter any negotiation, you got to prepare for your meeting. So using that example of Don and I, if Don came in asking for a raise, the best way to start that is to think about, okay, when am I going to ask? How am I going to ask? What am I going to ask to make my case and really prepare? What are some of the things that the boss could say that it's not in budget? What's my response to that? And so I think it's really important. I mean, anything you do in life, whether it's your employer or negotiating an apartment lease or anything, to really be prepared. Um, look at past precedents and see um, if they can set the tone for your current negotiation. So if Don had asked for a raise before and gotten it, what were the circumstances that led up to that? So really try to do your homework and understand the parties and the relationship between the two before you even start talking, because you don't want to enter a negotiation unprepared. Like, you can only get one chance, and that could be it. So just make sure you're prepared before you even start entering into the details.
Just to continue on the asking for a raise example, I also want to know the party that I'm going to. Okay, Donald is my boss, but if he's having a bad day or he's not feeling good or there's a problem in another area of our center, I'm going to recognize that even though I'm prepared to start this negotiation, that today or this precise time might not be a good time to start that negotiating with him. So
Right.
you got to be aware of all the conditions going into the negotiation, and that does include activity that's happening around the individuals at the moment.
Right. You don't just want to make it all about you and what you want. You want to look at the circumstances, because that can really set the tone for your presentation. If there's a big report due and you're coming in asking for a raise, that might not go over well. So I think Don's right there. Seeing what else is going on.
Timing. Okay, next slide. Okay, so you also want to be able to have active listening. So if I'm asking for something, I want to know that Donald is listening to what I'm asking for. He's not distracted. He's not doing something else. He's not futzing with his phone or playing on, email or doing anything else. That I know we're focused on each other so he can hear me and I can hear him. So sometimes active listening would require maybe reflecting. So I'm saying I would like a raise, but Donald, I heard you say that we can't afford it. Is there a time in the future maybe that we can afford it? That would be a fair question to ask. Of course, he would give me the best answer he can, but if we're not listening to each other, if we're not engaging one another, or if we're making demands that are not consistent with what the negotiation is, as well as demands that are ridiculous, that whole listening thing kind of changes. So that's why you want to be prepared. You want to stay focused. You want the timing to be right. And we're talking in a bit like a bigger thing here about me asking for more money, but negotiating can be a small, simple thing too in the moment. It could be wanting to sit next to the door. Could I please trade seats with you? And that person might say, well, I got here first, but you might say, you know what, I'm a little claustrophobic. I like it. I feel more comfortable if I can have the seat next to the door. Would you mind? So it can be in the moment, but always you want to stay calm and use that assertive communication.
Right. And I think listening is so important, because I think, you want to maintain the relationship. So that even if you can't come into some agreement with your employer or with whoever you're negotiating with, you want to make people feel like they're heard. So you want to, from an employer to employee side, you want to make them person feel heard, that you understand that what they're asking for, and you want to respond to them. And from the other side, you want your boss to feel heard, that, okay, there are other needs to the company. They have a budget to work with. They have other things to deal with. So I think you always want to make people, even if you can't come to some final resolution, feel heard. So I think that's why listening is important. If you're just going in there talking about what you want, you probably won't get what you want, but you also could damage the relationship going further forward.
And it does say, as one of the bullets on this slide, that the skilled negotiator will spend more time listening to the other party. It's not all about your viewpoint and what you want. You have to be able to hear the other side to get to a conclusion. Or maybe not, but at least both parties need to be heard.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Emotional control, I think that's so important. It's vital for a negotiator to keep their emotions under control. Um, you know, if you're negotiating, let's say for a raise, and like I said, you approach it the wrong way and you get upset, that can really throw off future negotiations. Um, you know, being able to keep your emotions under control and to keep a cool head about you, it will also, help you listen and understand what's being said. If you are getting too upset, you're again gonna throw off your ability to negotiate, And I think that the one in the negotiation who is too emotional or inappropriately emotional during it is at a disadvantage, because I think the other person you're negotiating with can take advantage of that and can see that, well, they're remaining cool. This is really upsetting you. So I think it's just you need to be able to keep your emotions in check, to be able to communicate effectively, to be able to listen effectively, and to be able to negotiate effectively. Um, like I said, if you're just upset, you're not, or angry, you're not going to be heard as well, and you're not going to be able to listen.
And I'm going to add for some of our younger viewers, again, negotiating happens all day, every day, and we don't even realize it. Perhaps the people that care for you give you limited time to watch television or play video games or, spend time with friends when you have homework and things to do. And you might ask for extra time sometimes. And if you go in kicking and screaming, how's that going to work for you? Probably not very well. Stay calm and you can present a case like, I finished all my work, or I didn't watch as much TV yesterday. Can I have a little extra time today? You'll probably get a better and a more favorable outcome than if you are using that aggressive communication.
And even if you don't get a favorable outcome that one time you asked, I think it sets a good precedent, because if you act appropriately and make your case in an effective way, even if it didn't work the first time, the next time you bring it up, it may work, because they'll remember that you kept your emotions under control and that you made a good case. So I think it really goes a long way in setting the tone for your, not only that negotiation, but your negotiations in the future.
Okay, so number 5 is verbal negotiation. So you have to have the ability to communicate, and you want to communicate clearly and effectively. And we talked about this already, I think. There can always be misunderstandings, but they can occur if the negotiator doesn't state his case, what he wants, what that person needs at the end of the negotiating. So you have to be able to state clearly in an assertive way what it is that you're asking for. You might need to back it up with why I'm asking for this. Just as the person that you are negotiating with needs to have answers that are clear and don't leave you wondering, well, why didn't that work out? So verbal communication is key.
It is key. Collaboration and teamwork. I think when you're negotiating, it's important to remember that negotiation is really a compromise. So, like in every compromise, both sides are going to get some stuff they want, and both sides are also going to get some stuff they don't want. So it really is a team effort in a lot of ways, because if you can't get to any agreement, then that affects everybody. So you really want to know that it is not necessarily just you against whoever you're negotiating with, and you also want to be able to work with in a team. Maybe you need help with the negotiation. Maybe you need to consult somebody else. You know, you got to be able to work with not only people on your side, but also the other side. You want to really try and be fair and reasonable, because at the end of the day, you want to come to an agreement. And even if you can't come to an agreement, you know, that one time, you don't want to burn a bridge. You know, maybe this is your boss, and maybe you couldn't come to an agreement about a raise increase, but you know, you still want to have a good relationship with them, and maybe you're going to ask for vacation in a week. So, you know, you really have to look at it as more of a team effort, because at the end of the day, good compromise helps everybody. You're
I'm
trying
also
to
thinking, sorry, Donald. I was also thinking about, again, simple negotiations that we do every day that we might not think are negotiating with others, but it could be, you know, a bunch of friends going to see a movie. What movie do we see? Well, I want to see, you know,
right.
this movie. Maybe you can go majority rules, but there could be other ways to say, well, you got to pick the last time, or, you know, my point is that negotiation happens all the time.
All the time.
Big, it can be little, but you don't want to be the person that always has to have their way, just like you don't want to give in to that person that always has to have their way. So you need to find compromise.
You want to be able to work with people, essentially, and I think that's what this slide is about. You want to be able to work with people, because you can't get anywhere if you're not willing to work with anybody. All right.
You or me? Me?
Yeah, I think it's you.
Okay. So number 7 is problem solving. And it says individuals with negotiation skills have the ability to seek a variety of solutions to problems. So there might not be just one answer. There might be several. There might be different, maybe we can't do it this way, but if you can be flexible, we can do it that way. So back to the raise thing, like we were saying before, you know, I can't give you a raise right now, but if our budget increases sometime in the future, we can come back and have this conversation at a later time. That's awesome. So instead of, again, just trying to get your way, you have to be flexible and find different solutions to the situation or the problem at hand. Sometimes there is only one answer, and that does occur, but often there is more than one answer, and that's where compromise and having more than one solution can help solve the problem.
Right. So back to that raise example, if we were unable to give your employee a raise, you could say, yeah, but I'm going to give you. Would you be open to taking more vacation time? So there's a creative answer to somebody wanting to feel more valued, and thinking that their work deserves it. But maybe you don't have money for a raise, but you have money for something else. So I think this slide is really about just, you know, be creative about it. Don't just look so be so limited to exactly what they're asking for, because maybe there's another way to get to a goal, to a successful compromise. And people appreciate it, even if you can't come up with the ultimate solution. If you're trying to solve a problem and get to a compromise, I think people appreciate that, even if you can't come to a final agreement. Oh, decision making. You got to be able to make decisions. At the end of the day, negotiations are about compromise, but then you have to decide. So you really have to be able to know what you want, and then when you see an agreement, be able to make a decision. Um, you know, if you are so indecisive, then the person or people you're negotiating with are not going to want to negotiate with you anymore, or make a deal with you, because they can't rely on you to make a decision. At the end of the day, you have to be able to make a decision. You have to be confident enough to know what you want and to recognize it too. Some people can negotiate themselves right out of a deal because they're so unwilling to compromise. So, but they could have gotten a lot of what they wanted if they were willing just to make a decision. So you got to be.
And going back to the raise thing, if I said, Donald, I want $2 more an hour, and he came back and actually could give me the raise and said, well, I can't give you $2 more an hour, but I can give you $1 more an hour. If I walked out of there and said, nope, $2 an hour or nothing,
Now you got no dollars.
then I walk out of there with nothing. So you do have to hear the other side and understand sometimes they're giving you the best that they can, and decide what you can compromise in that situation, how you can compromise.
And
Please, both sides.
using your example, Don, with the you need to be able to make a decision. You don't want to hear that offer and then not make a decision about it. Just let it linger and say, "I'll get back to you," but never get back to your boss, because that offer could be there for a limited time. So
Right.
you want to be able to make that decision. It's okay to think about it, but you don't want to be so indecisive that you let a good deal go by.
Okay, so number 9 is interpersonal skills, and I think we've talked about this. Effective negotiators have the interpersonal skills to maintain a good working relationship with those involved. So you don't want to anger people, you don't want to make enemies, you don't want to use that aggressive approach, so the next time you come along and ask for something, you get shut down immediately. So you want to have patience, and you want to have the ability to persuade, but you don't want to come off as manipulative. Again, we're going to go back to that assertive, positive communication skill, as opposed to being negative and aggressive, or even passive for that matter, because if you're not speaking up and if you're not speaking clearly, chances are what you're asking is not going to be even heard.
Oh, and I think this in a lot of ways is the most important one. Number 10, you got to be ethical and reliable. You got to come through with your deals. If let's go back to the parents example. If you say to your parents, "Oh, let me stay up and play video games and I'll get my homework done tomorrow," but you don't end up getting your homework done, then they're not going to make that deal with you again. So whether it's big or small, same thing with employer versus employee. If you say, give me this extra money and I'll work these extra hours for you, but then you decide, oh, I'm not going to work those extra hours, then you're not going to get any more agreements negotiation wise. So you really have to be reliable and be ethical. It really sets the tone for your negotiation. We just negotiated a lease for our office. If we weren't paying the rent on time, that would ruin the whole agreement. You got to be reliable, that you'll come through, that you not only can agree to a deal, but will be trusted to
Follow through.
follow through. All right, that's it.
Okay. So we always provide some links along the way and at the end. Feel free to check any of these out to get more information on how you can better your negotiating skills.
It's a very important